Oh,
Thank you. Okay, we are live from Coventry, Rhode Island Town Hall. This meeting of the Coventry Town Council will now come to order at 6:30 PM. Roll call, Ms. Ludwig,
yes.
Mrs. Shockley,
Yes.
Mrs. Lima,
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc,
Yes.
Ms. Dickson, and Mr. Marchand. And we have with us Mr. Gorham. Thank you. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Ludwig, please lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. First item is item C2, approval of the Town Council meeting minutes for June 7th, 2021, reference pages 4 to 6. Did any of you send in any corrections to the clerk? We will go to that, yes. No one sent in, I sent in corrections. She told me today that she has made the corrections. May I have a motion to accept the amended minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll make a second.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Ms. Ludwig,
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley,
Yes.
Mrs. Lima,
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc,
Yes.
Mrs. Dickson, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. First announcement, C3. I'm happy to announce that we are returning to in-person meetings starting July 26, 2021. We had previously voted to start in September, but I was informed by Mr. Marchand, who received an email from the League of Cities and Towns that we needed to start before the end of July. But then the governor submitted another executive order extension. But we are just going to proceed along, and we're going to have live meetings tonight. We're here, and we will continue having live meetings going forward. That makes it less confusing for the voters who know that we are here, and we hope that they will all join us. Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn into executive session at 6:32?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
I think you need to,
Do you want me to read it?
well, I think you need to state the bases for
Okay.
going in, and a brief mention of the names of the entities or
Right.
topics that you.
Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn into executive session at 6:32 for the following? A1, closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A2, session pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation, specifically for discussion of the following matter: Central Coventry Fire District and Coventry Housing Authority consent order and others, KC 2019-0944. A2, closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A1, session pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation, specifically Rittman versus Blier, PC 2002-5561 for a discussion of gatehouse and pipes for Tyoke Lake. And A3, closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A7, a matter relating to the question of the investment of public funds where the premature disclosure would adversely affect the public interest, specifically the placement of certain municipal funds on deposit with financial institutions. May I have a motion?
Just one
What?
correction on that motion.
You said,
Number 2, I think you meant to say that you're going to adjourn to closed session under 42465A2.
is it A2?
Instead of
I did say
A1.
A1.
The agenda does say A2.
Thank you for the correction. I appreciate it. Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn into executive session for the items just read?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Okay, roll call vote. Ms. Ludwig,
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley,
Yes.
Mrs. Lima,
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc,
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon. Thank you. Executive session. The town council will now adjourn to the executive session chamber room, which is behind us. For members of the public who are watching us, we expect to be back as close to possible at 8 o'clock. Thank you.
How many people are on? Did anyone tell?
All set? Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn the executive session?
I'll make a motion.
Thank
I'll
you.
second the motion.
Second. Roll call, Madam Clerk?
Jamie LeBlanc,
Yes.
Kimberly Shockley,
Yes.
Jennifer Ludwig,
Yes.
Hillary Lima,
Yes.
Ann Dickson.
Yes, thank you. 4 yeas, no nays. 5 yeas, no nays. May I have a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session?
So moved. I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Jamie LeBlanc,
Yes.
Kimberly Shockley,
Yes.
Jennifer Ludwig,
Yes.
Hillary Lima,
Yes.
Ann Dickson.
Yes.
Yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Members of the public, the council met in executive session for the following. Closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A2, session pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation, specifically for discussion of the following matter: Central Coventry Fire District and the Coventry Housing Authority consent order and others, Kent County 2019-0944. The council discussed the issues and will vote in public session. A2, closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A2, session pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation, specifically Rittman versus Blier, PC 2002-5561 for a discussion of litigation and pipes for Tioga Lake. That should be LC, not PC. The council discussed the issues and will vote in public session. Third issue, closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A7, a matter related to the question of the investment of public funds where the premature disclosure would adversely affect the public interest, specifically the placement of certain municipal funds on deposit with financial institutions. The council discussed the issue. No votes were taken. No decisions were made. Item D, public comment. Is there anyone on the Zoom that would like to make a public comment? Mr. Wazika?
There's no one with their hand up, ma'am. We have 17 attendees, 18 attendees, for no hands raised to make a comment.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, and we'll move on to item E1. Discussion, action, approval, ratification of consent order and judgment for Central Coventry Fire District and Coventry Housing Authority litigation. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to authorize Mr. Dimitri on behalf of the town of Coventry to enter into the Central Coventry Fire District and Coventry Housing Authority consent order.
May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call vote?
Jamie LeBlanc,
Yes.
Kimberly Shockley,
Yes.
Jennifer Ludwig,
Yes.
Hillary Lima,
Yes.
Ann Dickson.
Yes. Next item, discussion action, Town of Coventry rule regarding Tioga Lake Gatehouse and pipes. May I have a motion?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to accept the deed in proper form from Quidnick Reservoir for the Tioga Lake Gatehouse and associated pipes.
May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. LeBlanc. Any discussion? Roll call vote?
Yes,
Madam
there's
Clerk?
discussion.
I'm sorry, what?
Yes, discussion.
Oh, discussion?
So we, just for the public's information, we do already own the rights to the water on either side of, I believe, Route 3. And the motion is to accept a deed for pieces that were not specifically defined in what we consider the appropriate manner on the original deed, correct?
Correct.
That is correct.
So I do see this as an opportunity for us to use lessons learned from a situation we're facing at Johnson's Pond to have an opportunity to protect our residents. Thank you for making the motion, Hillary, a council member.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Jamie LeBlanc,
Yes.
Kimberly Shockley,
Yes.
Jennifer Ludwig,
Yes.
Hillary Lima,
Yes.
Ann Dickson.
Yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Okay, the next item is E3, Enterprise Fleet Management Agreement to lease vehicles for the town of Coventry. Mr. Marchand, would you please speak on this issue? This is reference pages 7 to 20.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. The town council has previously reviewed this and received a presentation in June from Enterprise Fleet Management Services outlining the scope and benefits of this fleet management program. This will allow the town to better manage its fleet resources through a lease purchase program, and it will allow the town to retain a higher value, a younger vehicle, and save a lot of expenses that are currently going towards maintaining older vehicles on the maintenance side. And so,
Thank you.
thank you.
Could you just, for the public's information, although we've mentioned this in previous meetings, how much is this agreement going to cost the town per year?
I believe we've budgeted $100,000 for 2021-22 for the lease of 10 vehicles, which will be replacing 10 old vehicles. And the projected savings over 10 years is $800,000. And so on an annualized basis, we're keeping our costs down from year to year. So we should not see an increase in our fleet management expenses for the duration of this agreement.
And how long will this agreement at approximately $100,000 last us? In other words, that's for year one. What do we anticipate for, say, year two, year three, et cetera?
Well, there will be fluctuations in the level of investment as we determine how many vehicles to replace in each year. So some years could be more or less, depending on what we have on our replacement schedule.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from members of the council?
Just out of curiosity, what's the amount that's going to be in number 3 under terms and conditions? It was blank, just out of curiosity. The service fee.
What is the reference page for that?
Page 7 of 20.
Page 7 of 20. Going down, we're under terms and conditions, number 3, as Mrs. Lehman mentioned, there is a blank here where it says $1 with no number.
Yeah, the administrative fee is, let's see. I don't recall how that was structured, and I'm not finding it in my reference materials, so I'll have to provide that information to you at a later time. But as I recall, it provides 2 alternatives. One, the lesser of a straight fee. I think it was going to be equivalent to about $15,000 to $20,000 a year, but based on how the fleet operates, they're providing the vehicles and they have that service fee built into the acquisition and sale costs. So they're providing services on the acquisition and disposal of vehicles.
Okay. And then just to confirm again, the $100,000 per year, was that already budgeted for DPW or is that going to come from the town side?
That's budgeted in DPW.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Okay, Ms. Ludwig.
Just a comment. So thank you very much for your diligence in looking into this program. I think we've seen a number of vehicles over the last 6 months that are in just atrocious conditions, and finding a way to bring us into the future with newer vehicles, working with Enterprise Fleet, it just makes sense. So thank you for pursuing this.
Certainly. Kind of on one of those unfortunate humorous notes, one of our very worst vehicles in Parks and Rec was actually struck by another vehicle, and we got something for it. I couldn't believe it. But the insurance paid out the claim on the value, the remaining value of that vehicle, which is, I think, quite a bit more than we could get on Blue Book.
Fantastic. And no one was hurt.
No one was hurt.
Okay.
Everything was fine. But that is one of the vehicles that we are going to try to replace first. And we won't be waiting for a vehicle off the dealership lot or the manufacturing line. We're going to just take the fastest vehicle we can find to replace it.
Madam President, do you
Yes.
need a motion?
I was going to ask Mr. Gorham. Mr. Gorham, we have an assignment agreement and a master lease agreement. Do we need two motions, one for each one of those?
No,
Just one?
I think they're
I think they're interrelated and sort of in tandem, so
Okay.
you can approve them together
Okay.
as one.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the enterprise fleet management agreement to lease vehicles for the town of Coventry?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Jamie LeBlanc,
Yes.
Kimberly Shockley,
Yes.
Jennifer Ludwig,
Yes.
Hillary Lima,
Yes.
Ann Dickson.
Yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Thank you. Mr. Wazika, we're at agenda item E4. We have two guests with us this evening. I believe it's Mr. Dan Joyce, president of Balanced Rock Energy, and Mr. Russ Maymon. Is it Maymon? Is that correct? Mayman, thank you. Business Development for Watershed Development. Thank you. Mr. Wazika, welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll just give you a quick overview of what tonight's about. This is simply a presentation. There's no resolutions on the books. This is just to advise the council what we've done, where we're going, what we'd like to go to. And unlike everything else that you did tonight, where you're spending money, this will actually generate revenue for the town and bring an annual revenue in without any cost to the town. So I'm going to, we ended up using a consulting company on the solar because obviously our expertise in solar development are a little weak. So we have Mr. Dan Joyce from, he's the president and founder of Balanced Rock Energy. He's also the gentleman in the company that was utilized by the school department in their analysis for a power purchase agreement. So I'm going to allow Mr. Joyce.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Joyce, welcome, and Mr. Joyce, welcome, and I'd like to have each member of the town council introduce himself or herself so that you'll know who is sitting here before you, so we can start at the far end.
Jamie LeBlanc, council member for District 3. Good evening.
Hillary Lima, council member for District 4 and Arnold Road landfills in my district.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Kimberly Shockley, councilperson for District 5.
And Dickson, council president, District 1.
Hi, Jen Ludwig, District 2.
Nicholas Gorham, town solicitor. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hello again, Ben Marchant, town manager.
And we have our town clerk.
Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Joanne Amatrano.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're all set, and the audience is here.
Okay. Welcome, everyone.
You didn't bring popcorn.
So thank you all for having me. What we're here to talk about is solar development at the Arnold Road landfill. A little bit on my background before I get started. So I am the president of Balanced Rock Energy. We've personally been in the energy space for about 17 years, primarily assisting higher ed, industrial, institutional, and government clients with electricity, natural gas, and solar and other types of renewable agreements. So this has been the space that I've personally worked in for quite a while. Typically, we're involved from a procurement or RFP standpoint, where we're going out to multiple developers asking for them to respond to proposals. The opportunity that you have here is a terrific one from a location standpoint with developing solar. So I think we can all agree that solar, or most people would probably agree that solar is a really great opportunity to generate clean, renewable energy. Where sometimes it gets tricky is where it's going to be located. Ideally, people want to locate solar projects on brownfields or dormant land or land that's not going to be useful for any other like meaningful purpose. So that's where you have a terrific opportunity to take a capped landfill, invite a solar developer to cover it with panels, and the town will get a lease payment from the developer. So this is a great opportunity, and there's lots of, this is happening all around the country, and certainly a good opportunity for the town of Coventry to generate some revenue. From a developer standpoint, the developer who put the cap on the landfill is Watershed Geo. So Watershed Geo capped the landfill. That name may ring a bell. You may have approved that years ago when that was done. They capped the landfill. They hold and honor the warranty on that capped landfill. There isn't anybody, I'm sure, Ed, there isn't anybody that wants to do anything to cause a problem with the warranty on that landfill. That's just too much of a liability for the town. So where my company came in is we have a developer that we want to work. So Watershed Geo has a partnership with Watershed Solar to develop solar on their capped landfills. Anybody outside of Watershed Solar is going to void that warranty. So you're in a situation where you have an opportunity to develop solar, but there's really just one developer that you can work with. And so that's where Ed, through a couple of different referrals, referred my company in to say, could you help us out with a negotiation to come to a fair agreement on a lease payment to the town for this solar development. Typically, my firm would go out, if this was an open bidding process, my firm would go out to all of the available developers and invite them to put together proposals. We'd evaluate the proposals, we'd rank them, and we'd make a recommendation. This was a little bit different, but I feel confident with the result that we came up with. From a lease revenue standpoint, based on everything we know about the market, what you have an opportunity to do is get a lease payment from the developer. The lease payment is per megawatt. So per megawatt hour, or per megawatt, I should say, based on the size of the project. The size of the project is estimated to be about 5 megawatts, plus or minus. Based on my professional experience in the marketplace, the range of payments per megawatt per year is $15,000 to $20,000 per megawatt per year is kind of where I feel the market is from a competitive standpoint. So what we did is we worked with Watershed Solar and we asked for their kind of opening offer, if you will. And I think the original offer may have been under 15,000, but in the summary, we put 15,000 as the initial offer for the project. That is something that I talked with Ed about, and we felt that was kind of at the low end of the range from a megawatt standpoint. We then evaluated what we can do. Could we go out? Could we still go out to bid? Could we still release a request for pricing to all of the developers, letting the developers know that there is a warranty issue that they're going to need to deal with? What we did is we contacted a couple of the developers that typically would bid on this type of a development, and they were not comfortable with the warranty aspect of it. We then communicated that. I talked with Ed, and we evaluated our options, and the decision was made to go back to Watershed Solar and ask them for a best and final offer to provide us the best opportunity they could from an annual lease payment. And if that was favorable, we would then forego the RFP process, keeping in mind that the RFP process was going to be tricky. And we would probably need Mr. Gorham's, assistance in something like that. We don't really want to go that route. The quickest route and the cleanest route and the safest route for everybody involved from a warranty standpoint is to work with Watershed Solar. So Watershed Solar came back and improved their offer to $18,000 per megawatt hour for the project. It's about 5 megawatts. That equates to about $90,000 per year. That's an amount of money that I think is very fair. This is not, the location is clean from a cap standpoint, but there are interconnection issues with National Grid. There's other solar projects in the area. It's the interconnection cost to connect that power to the grid is likely going to be more than what a typical project of that size would be. So there are definitely some good things about it from a development standpoint, but the interconnection costs could be and likely would be a little more than typical. My recommendation in the summary that we put together for Ed and what I would, give you from my professional credibility is that an $18,000 per megawatt with a 1% annual escalator is a fair amount of revenue for the town to receive. It would be based over a 25-year lease agreement, and the total revenue over 25 years is $2.5 million. And that's land that's dormant to the town. You're obviously not going to really be able to do anything else with that land. So it's, just under 100,000 a year and $2.5 million over 25 years. And I think it's a fair amount of revenue. And if I were in your position, that's something I would feel good about, approving. So that's my recommendation, is to move forward with Watershed Solar with that agreement. The first step would be to sign a letter of intent and then to begin working, pretty much immediately on a long-term power purchase agreement with Watershed Solar that will then allow Watershed Solar to get started with permitting in their process.
Any questions from members of the council? Mr. LeBlanc.
You said a 1% increase?
Yes.
And how many years is this?
It's a 25-year agreement, and the offer is a 1% annual escalator.
So energy prices typically never go down. They go up significantly. Costs, I would say, cost of purchasing energy. So is a 1% increase, is that actually fair per year?
So the first step on the energy prices, the delivery portion of energy always goes up. Mm-hmm. So the National Grid delivery charge, that really just goes up. And my opinion is that that's going to continue to go up. The supply cost of energy actually fluctuates quite a bit. We're kind of at the low end of the range, but it's been increasing since January. I don't really think the 1% escalator is necessarily tied, or I hadn't really thought about that as being tied to the underlying wholesale cost of power. Mm-hmm. But it's a good point. When we model out costs for clients going forward, we typically use like a 1.5% or maybe a 2% escalator if we're modeling, future energy costs over, say, 20 years.
Okay. Is that something that we could negotiate?
I would say absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for your presentation tonight.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
Mrs. Lima.
I'm not sure if I'm getting ahead in the presentation because I'm about to reference something that's in that PowerPoint, so stop me.
So Russ is from Watershed Solar. So Russ has a presentation to go through. So if it's questions about the specific project, I would hold for Russ.
I'm not sure if it is. So I get, you can tell me if
Sure.
it should wait. But
yeah.
So my question is, we always hear in the state about how there's no longer any space, or I don't know the right terminology for solar energy or use of solar energy. So was just curious, what benefit besides it just bringing in revenue from the lease it could have with the town as far as energy consumption or the ability to utilize. That might be a question.
So typically with solar development, there's two things that you can do. If the solar project or the solar development is going to be located where you're actually using the power, think of like a rooftop for an industrial facility, they could generate power and actually use the power on site. When the solar is being generated at an offsite location where you're not able to physically use the power, that's where the power is going to flow back to National Grid. National Grid keeps track of the power, and the program in Rhode Island allows the developer to, in effect, sell that excess or sell that power in the form of remote net metered credits to qualified off-takers.
And that's the revenue coming back to us.
No, so you're actually, I wasn't involved with it. With this agreement here, let me back up a little bit. With this agreement here, you're simply leasing your land to the developer.
Okay.
So this isn't a power purchase agreement at all. It's no different than if you were, if you own farmland and you wanted to lease your land to another farmer, or you're simply just leasing the land. You're getting a payment every year. The developer is responsible to build it, maintain it, warranty it, sell the power. So literally all you're doing is signing an agreement that is going to provide you with about $90,000 a year of revenue, and they're going to take it. They're going to generate the power from that.
Okay, so where my head is going with this is, can whatever energy that's generated from this be used by municipal facilities for lower energy costs, I guess is my question.
So I am aware of an agreement that Coventry has with a developer where you are purchasing. I wasn't involved in it, but
Neither was I, yeah.
I believe that you do have an agreement where you are purchasing power from an off-site renewable project. And I would assume that you're at about an 80% cap. So you can go up to about 80% of your annualized electricity usage, and you can buy this power at a discount. And it's a really favorable discount. And my firm has a lot of experience with it. I think you already have the agreement. Somebody else, it sounds like there is an agreement. Yeah, so you wouldn't be able to get an additional agreement. You can buy up to, we recommend generally about up to 80% or maybe 90% at the most.
Okay, so this energy, based on the fact we have an agreement, is just gonna flow back out to National Grid.
And they're gonna sell it to, they're ultimately going to find, I think they might already have a potential off-taker that they're thinking about.
Okay.
So the way the program works in Rhode Island, nonprofits, so cities, towns, higher ed, hospitals can buy these remote net metered credits from solar developers.
Okay.
And so once you're maxed out, really, you're going to be maxed out on your own electricity purchase. You're now going to be using this land here at the landfill. The only other opportunity would be if there's any other dormant land in town that may be a good fit for solar development. If there were any other brownfields, again, I'm not from Coventry, if there's any other brownfields, any other land that's dormant, you could potentially think about an additional solar lease agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Shockley. Thank you. I just want to make sure I'm understanding a few things in the agreement. So when we execute the letter of intent, the town will get $5,000 from Watershed Geo. So it sounds like they expect to get this built within a year and hopefully within 2. But it gives the option for the other $5,000 if you haven't done it within 12 months. So, and then it says that you can decide to terminate at any time, Watershed Solar. But also it's at your cost that you take everything down. So if you were to decide to terminate our lease, you would bear the burden of removing the solar panels?
I think the termination refers to the LOI, this option period. If we come across some huge expense that we can't make work, we can terminate for this option.
Just in the LOI portion of it before you, okay.
They will actually, and I get down something there. There's a decommissioning bond that can be placed in the town to take care of anything that happens in case whoever owns it ultimately goes out of business.
Okay. And then it seems like on top of the lease payments, tax revenue will be gained from the solar panels themselves? Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Ludwig?
Councilor LeBlanc had asked my question earlier, so I would second a review of the escalator. Thank you.
And I have a question. Right now, there's only one source that is a possibility. But there may be others later in the decade, and this lease is for 25 years. It doesn't seem like there's much opportunity within 25 years for negotiation opportunities, whether it's the 1% escalator or, purchasing power, et cetera. How does the town protect itself so that should there be other opportunities that come along, we might be able to engage in some kind of negotiation? Because this seems like it's pretty set for 25 years. And we've had 25-year agreements for other kinds of things that are happening in town. And we're looking back at that and we're saying 25 years is a long time. And we're making an agreement that, probably our grandchildren will be left to bear the brunt of. So help us understand that 25-year lease and what we can do to put ourselves in a good position as a town.
So it is no doubt, it's a long-term agreement. And the reality of solar and solar development is that the costs are really significant to develop solar, and the amount of revenue that the developer needs to bring in to pay off and be profitable to develop solar, it just needs to be over a long period of time. The life of the equipment is also about 25 years. So it just makes sense that you have an agreement for that amount of time. I can't foresee anything better happening for the town as far as a use of this land. If something extraordinary became available, you always would have the potential to terminate the agreement, but that would be with damages. You wouldn't do that. If you approve this agreement, you're going to have solar on the landfill for 25 years. The likelihood is at the end of that 25-year term, there likely will be it's possible solar is not relevant anymore, but in my opinion, the likelihood is that you would negotiate a new agreement with potentially a new developer or a new group of developers or with the same developer for a new term, but with new equipment, new technology, so it will be improved. But I can't from a time frame standpoint, the time of 25 years makes sense. If 20 years made you feel more comfortable, you could certainly propose that, just like what you're thinking about on the escalator. If 20 made you feel better, I think you could potentially propose 20, and then with a couple of, say, 5-year extensions that are mutually agreeable, I think would be something to consider. But I think if you went any lower than 20, and again, I can't speak for the developer, I'm just speaking from what I can advise you on. I think if you went below 20, it would be difficult for them to make you a competitive lease payment offer.
Any other questions? Mr. LeBlanc.
One additional question. In your experience, let's just say in 5 or 10 years, solar panels have the ability to get additional kilowatt hours in this project. Would we be able to make more money and open up the contract at that point in time? And have you had those type of openings to contracts that you've?
So the second piece is no, we haven't. The improvements in solar are just incremental, not massive enough where it would be worthwhile to replace an entire project with all new panels.
Okay.
It's just too expensive.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right, ready to move on? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can I ask, do we have the ability to share the PowerPoint on the Zoom presentation?
I don't have it, but I will call up on the website tomorrow.
Okay, if in the future, if we're doing Zoom and in person. No, that's fine. I'm just, as a member of the public prior to being on the council, it would have been more beneficial for me to see the presentation being offered than the council members.
So good evening. My name is Russ Mayman from Watershed Solar Development. Thank you for having me here tonight. I have the presentation, and I'll try to be brief with it, because if you recall, we presented to you back in December, and it's very similar to what we did then. It's got some updates, but as we just saw, I like to have the questions and answers through the presentation. So by all means, stop me if you have a question, and we'll move on. So Watershed Solar Development is, as Dan mentioned, a company that was formed between Watershed Geo, which is the manufacturer of your closure turf product, and a local developer, solar developer, ISM Solar. ISM is in East Providence, Rhode Island, has developed over 81 megawatts of projects throughout Rhode Island, Mass, and Maine. The Watershed Solar Development team, all of us have more than 10 years of solar experience. We've worked on projects from less than a megawatt to over 50 megawatts. Talking about the incentive programs, we've worked on community solar projects, PPAs, virtual net metering agreements, and commercial behind the meter agreements. ISM has 47 megawatts of community solar projects up in Maine right now under construction, and we were the first developer of community solar in Rhode Island with a 3.5 megawatt project up in Burrowville. Highlight a project for comparison reasons. We developed a 3.5 megawatt project on the Cranston Sanitary landfill, which has the closure turf on it. If you want to go ahead and roll the slide. You can see the solar there on top of the closure turf. You can see the closure turf. Just for a little reference, these projects are held in place by, as you can see, ballast blocks. We do not penetrate through the closure turf product. Typically, it's only one solar panel high, and the amount of ballast block is an engineering exercise that has to be done depending on the size of the system and where it's located, wind loads, and those kinds of things. So, okay, go ahead, roll. So some of the exclusive benefits by working with Watershed Solar Development for the landfill owner, primarily, as Dan alluded to, is the extended warranty. So by leasing the landfill site, we will pay for and manage an extended warranty for the landfill on the closure turf. So for the life of the landfill, we'll be responsible for that. The town will not have to worry about it. So it'll give you peace of mind that the landfill is going to be taken care of during the entire life of the solar lease. You can also count on the quality assurance from the Watershed Geo team being involved during construction and utilizing standard operating procedures for the process. And this came in handy in the Cranston landfill, where we did a walkthrough and picked up some deficiencies in some of the infill and took care of that before the solar went down. So just to give you an overview of what happens in the development process for solar, there's basically 4 things that we have to do as solar developers. We have to get site control, take care of the interconnection process, the permitting, and then monetize the power, as we started talking about. So the site control is what we're doing here. We typically lease these sites from the owner. Occasionally there will be a purchase of a site, but mostly it's leases, and especially with a landfill, we're going to lease the site. The interconnection application is something that we go through with the National Grid Distribution Company, as well as the local transmission group in this area is ISO New England. That process for this project is actually complete already. Mr. Wazika and my colleague Mike Lucini started the process 18 months ago, and it's now complete. So we're ready to interconnect. The permitting will pick up as soon as we have the site control in place. We actually have had a pre-meeting with Mr. Wazika and your planner, Russ Crossman, and we have the plan laid out that will take us probably into the January, February time before we're fully permitted. And then, as Dan alluded to, it's on us to what we refer to as monetizing the power. We are working right now with the state of Rhode Island, who put out an RFP about 2 months ago for about 100 megawatts worth of power. We are in the middle of the technical evaluation on that RFP. Nick Ucci, who is the Office of Energy Commissioner, and Chris Kearns, who's the Renewable Energy Director, came out and visited the site. So I know we're in the process and keeping our fingers crossed that we get an award. But whether we get an award or not, we'll be able to monetize the power from this project. And I apologize for the small print here, but this is basically an overshot of the preliminary layout. And as Dan alluded to, it's 5 megawatts plus or minus. The preliminary word is very important. So the size may change when we get to final construction. But as you can see, we've maximized the flat area on the top deck of the landfill. There's a setback for the vents and the property boundaries. The size could change a little bit, but for right now, we're fairly confident it'll be right around 5 megawatts DC. So any questions on this on the site or?
I have one question on the site. So around the perimeter of this location is a current fence. In some areas, it's sagging a bit. So if something happens and someone trespasses or whatever it is and, moves one of your faster blocks, what recourse do we have there? Is that something that we have to then work with you on, or what would happen in that instance?
Yeah, so it would be on us and our insurance policy to monitor that. But first of all, we are aware of the fence issue. And we are working with the group, the PRP group, who is supposed to put the fence up. All landfill projects are fenced in, so we've worked out an arrangement to split that with them. So you will be getting a new fence as part of the project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. LeBlanc?
If residents around the landfill or any property owner, I know there's BJ's is kind of over that way.
Yep.
If they have any complaints about reflection of sun, how would you address that?
So we would go through that first. We'd have, if there's any issues in terms of where the glare would be, there's a glare analysis we can do. But really, I don't think this is going to affect anyone. The panels face due south, so that diagram is facing towards the south.
Okay.
I don't think there's any population down there. I think there's a manufacturing facility.
There is.
Just to the south of it.
Yep. Well, and people drive, the road's right there too, so I didn't know if driving, if there's going to be a glare.
Yeah, no, so with the
any complaints
elevation,
like that.
there's about a 5 or a 10 degree pitch
Sure.
on a landfill project solar panel.
Okay.
So it's going to be facing up. There really should be no glare at all from it.
Okay, but if there are complaints, you will work to.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. And I'll just point out one more thing on the diagram, just so you all are aware of where everything's going.
Right up in this area is what we call the equipment pad, so there's a transformer.
You're moving back.
Is that all right?
Ed?
Yeah, one more. Yeah. So there's an equipment pad up here, which is right near Arnold Road, and there will be about 6 telephone poles that come in as part of the project. That's a protocol from National Grid that I can't change.
3 of those poles would be customer poles, and the other 3 or 4 will belong to National Grid. And again, that's just a protocol for building solar projects. There's reclosers and air brakes and things that go on those poles that have to be there. So just so you understand what you're going to see out on the road side of it. So.
Do you have any pictures of an example of that from the Boroughville or Cranston projects that you could show to us?
Not with me right now, but absolutely. And I'll put this out there. So the Cranston landfill, we have another customer who are taking on a site visit this Wednesday, 10 o'clock. Anyone is welcome to join us and come out and see the site. It's on Pontiac Ave, over in the area of the prisons behind Waste Management.
Okay. We have a question from Mrs. Lima.
I was going to ask the same question as Mr. LeBlanc, but so has a glare analysis already been conducted and we know that this isn't going to direct sunlight into traffic on Arnold Road or into any of the residences on the outskirts there? We've confirmed that?
So no, there is not a glare analysis. The only time you do a glare analysis typically is when you're within the range of an airport. It's an FAA regulation you have to do. From this project standpoint, again, the panels are facing this way.
Facing center of New England.
Nope.
No,
Facing
they're
out
not.
here.
Oh,
This is Arnold Road. a couple of businesses here,
Yeah,
and that's really where the panels are facing.
yeah, there are a couple houses and then there's that Cumberland Farms and Dunkin' Donuts. And
Are there houses down here?
there's a few sprinkled, so it's the landfill, maybe a cluster of 4 or 5, and then there's
I think one of
there's a street where it's kind of, yes.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, there's a street where you could, instead of taking a right onto New London to get into the entrance for Center New England, there's a small street that has about 6 or 7 houses.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure that, they're not going to be sitting out in their backyards and get.
Again, it's elevated. It's very high. I'd be more than happy to work with Mr. Warzika and have them come out and stand up top there and see what kind of direction these panels are gonna face.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they're that height and they're facing, skyward towards the sun. So, again,
Yes.
at a 5 or 10
Yes,
degree
let's
pitch.
do that.
Yeah.
Yes, please, let's do that.
Let's call
Yeah.
those people.
Yes.
And I forgot where I was going with this, but are these panels ones that just stay in whatever place it is
Yes.
for 25 years?
Yeah.
They never tilt or
No,
just?
so that's, you're referring to tracking. There are some solar tracking systems, and actually we're putting some up in Maine, but these are not tracking. Tracking is a mechanical device, and you really need them to be super stable to deal with that movement, and we need to penetrate the ground, and we're not going to penetrate. So you wouldn't have a tracking system on top of a landfill, which utilizes the ballast system you saw.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this question is more for the town sides. And excuse me, because I just came on the council
Yep.
a month and a half ago. Have we gotten to the part in the planning process where these people in these homes would be notified or?
That is, will come up during the major land development
that's
request. Yep.
Okay,
So once I have site control, then, and I say this is how solar process, solar development goes along. We get site control, then we go to the town and start the permitting process. So I don't have site control here yet, so I can't do that.
okay,
So once we do, we'll start the planning process with your planning department, and there's several meetings we'll go through, public meetings in front of the planning board.
Someone will be involved in this
Right.
regular process.
Yeah.
There's, as far as allowed use, it's automatically allowed under the town. But as far as permitting, it still has to follow all procedures for permits. So there will be public hearings, all the neighbors will have to be notified, and the usual process that takes place for something.
okay.
So we don't skip any of that.
It hasn't happened yet, okay.
We're still obligated to do the same.
Do these make any noise or hum or
No,
anything?
no.
Okay.
It's a very benign process. The panels themselves make absolutely no noise. Solar energy is an electrochemical reaction that happens, actually. You don't hear anything. There are transformers, and if you've ever heard transformers do hum a little bit, but these are very quiet.
If you do have any walkthroughs or meetings with Mr. Crossman, I'd appreciate being invited to
Sure.
tag along if the opportunity is available before it gets to that point. But
Yeah.
I think we'd definitely like to get over there. I haven't just done a walkthrough like maybe some of the other council members have. So
And if the 14,
Mrs. Williams, would you like to go over there this week?
yeah, that would be great.
Then
Thank
I'll get you over there this week to go see the landfill.
Okay.
Give me a schedule so I know when you're available, and we'll get over there.
Thanks, Ed.
You're welcome.
Mr. Maynard, I've seen many solar arrays like on Route 138, Route 3, et cetera. I don't see any plantings around them. I don't see any security fences, et cetera. How are these going to be set up? Will there be some kind of secure fencing? Will there be any plantings? How is it going to be positioned?
so the fencing is typically spelled out in the town's planning ordinance or solar zoning ordinance. It's
Okay.
probably a 7-foot. I think that's also electrical code.
The upside of this is where we have that fence, the existing fence around
Yeah.
the landfill. That needs to be upgraded as part of finalizing that project. That's covered under the PRP program, and they were gonna have to pay out of that fund for all of it. Because of this project, that cost is actually gonna be split, develop a appropriate fence around the entire complex. So we're gonna have an upgraded fence to secure that whole place. As far as vegetation, this thing is elevated so high up. You're not gonna see it. The only time you would see any of this is if you're coming down Arnold Road, going up Arnold Road, you're not gonna see it. You're a little bit higher up there, so you would see the edge of the,
Right.
Oh, so it's not going the extent of the landfill towards the street?
Just the flat deck, the top deck. Yep.
It's going to be, you will see it from BJ's, the back of BJ's, because that's very flat.
Which is gonna be a nice little view from BJ's.
Yeah. That would be flat from BJ's,
And that will be the back side. So
Right.
you won't have to worry about glare on that side.
correct?
You really won't have to worry about glare anywhere on this because of the angle. They're pointing almost directly up into the sky.
Mhm.
We can't really, so if you have a ground array, where it's anchored in the ground, the pitch is typically about 25 degrees. So they're pointing more straight on a ground array. With a landfill, because of the limited ballast I can put down to hold them in place, the pitch is much less because you can't have the wind upload. So at a 5 or 10 degree pitch, they're pointing almost right up in the sky.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
President Dason?
Mr. Blank?
I think two questions for, I think it's either Mr. Wizika or Mr. Marchant. Will there be a public hearing before the town council agrees to any lease?
Public hearing. I was hoping to get the lease up in front of the council, if we can get everything finalized this next week with Mr. Joe Foxside, which is the attorney for our process involving the landfill, and get it in front of the council on the 26th. So I mean, it wouldn't be a public hearing, it's not required to do the lease, but it would be an open meeting.
Just because of our past experience with solar or green energy, I just feel like we should be extremely precautionary and maybe send out a notice to Arnold Road residents, the businesses around. I know it costs money, but I would hate for a similar situation to happen again. So that'd be my recommendation. I don't know how the rest of the council members feel.
Okay.
We're more than happy to participate in a butter meeting.
Okay, so Mr. Wazika, in order to have a public hearing, we'd have to advertise it. So we need at least 3-week lead, right?
I don't know why I don't even know what the grounds for the public hearing would be.
I mean, I'm just asking the question.
That would be a question. We could do a special meeting. If you want to do a meeting on a Friday night or a Saturday, whatever, and we can invite all of the neighborhood over, and we do a meeting like we've done in the past with some other things, but not necessarily a council-based meeting. We can do a neighborhood meeting here. So the council, we don't have to do a formal meeting, and the gentlemen, if they don't mind being involved, we'll get them in. And that would be open questions for anybody in the neighborhood.
Highly would suggest it just as an educational, informational
I don't need to
meeting.
know that it needs to be called public hearing per
Yes.
se.
Right.
A public meeting.
Info session, whatever.
And that we notified the abutters, we let them know this was happening. I just don't want anybody to be caught by surprise. And then we've already signed the lease and we're already handcuffed.
So that's, if I might, that's why we call it a lease option agreement, the term that Councilman Shockey was referring to earlier. The lease option term, is 12 months with a 12-month extension. That gives us the time to get those entitlements that I told you. If one of those entitlements falls through, if I can't get this permitted, it's on me. You don't lose anything. So if we go through this public process, the public comes up and objects and the town doesn't grant us a permit, you haven't lost anything. You've got $5,000 for the lease option agreement. That's where that comes from. That gives me the time to go and get all those entitlements. So you really don't lose anything. There's still going to be a public process, but I understand your concern.
Yeah, it's not about us losing anything. It's just, I just want to be very open with the residents around the area of what's going on. Because there's been a lot of surprises in town where residents have been very upset and we've already signed agreements and we can't back out.
Yeah,
that's all.
And I'm just trying to keep things moving because as Mr. Wazika and I have talked about, the quicker it goes through the process, the quicker the town starts making some money. That's all, just trying to keep it moving. Yep.
Mr. LeBlanc, I can look at Saturday prior to the 26th. There's going to be a meeting in council chamber, and we'll zoom it out if need be, but we'll set something up for that day. Is that good for you gentlemen? Yep. I think that's the 23rd or the 24th.
Yep.
If that would work.
It's fine with me.
Well, it's actually the only one we really need.
Right. Yeah.
If that would work, we'll set something up for the 23rd and we'll have it in here.
Yep.
If the council.
So that would be a public meeting, wouldn't it?
It'll be a
It'd be a public meeting,
meeting without, it's not a council meeting, it will be a public meeting, informational meeting
for the residents of the area.
But if all the council members would be here, then it would be a public meeting.
Then we'd have to advertise, you'd have to advertise.
Ties it,
Report of the Attorney General, all of that.
correct.
It's not going to be that, I mean, it's going to be a public,
President Dixon,
public forum, actually, what we would call it.
President Dixon, I would suggest just 2 council members attend.
Yeah.
Well, similar to the financial town meeting where the entire council could be present, but it wasn't a town council meeting.
Mhm. How do you plan on letting the key community members know, the ones who would most likely impact about the meeting?
We will utilize our GIS system along with the address based on a diameter around the site. And every resident will give you the addresses, labels, and we dump out the letters and then inviting them to the meeting.
Beautiful. Okay, great. Thank you.
That way we can get it done before the 26th and not pull this up if we can avoid it.
I would appreciate it. Thank you.
And that, what would be the radius for that notification? How many feet out?
We'll look at the map. It'll be at least, I'm going to say probably 300 to 500 feet, maybe further, once we look at it, see what it encompasses.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I need to know exactly, it's going to get to the point where there's no sense pulling in people left, but just beyond anything that this is going to go back. So I want to make sure I don't want to lock myself into a number right now. I want to look at it and see what's appropriate based on the area surrounding it. And again, because you've got all of the industrial development behind it, all of that's out of it. So you're only talking about like a half moon of people that we'd be getting from. So we do that, and we probably include everybody on Arnold Road and
Arnold Road.
Street, and hit them out there and get the letters out, and we'll see what we get for response.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Mr. Wazika, you've been working with these gentlemen for probably a couple of years now. Any more comments you have about this project?
This project to me is bringing to fruition and completing the process of a brownfield that took a ton of money to clean up, where it's capped, and now to turn that into the ultimate green energy developer or producer. I think this is just going full circle on that property. I think this is a great project. I had hoped that we were going to be able to do an RFP on this project. The fact of the closure material that's used prevents that. I'm very satisfied with what Dan has done, Mr. Joyce has done on consulting and doing his research on this and getting us the numbers that we are. We still have to go and finalize a whole lease and put that up in front of the council and do it all. So there may be some other things that happen between now and then, but you'll have the opportunity to vote and express your concerns on all of that at that point. But I'm happy with where we are. I think this is a great project. The one thing we did look at, I was hoping to be able to do with this, is the program that the state had where a project can be dedicated to the residents.
Community solar. Yeah, community solar.
Community solar, unfortunately, there's no capacity left in the state to be able to do that. We spoke to the state to see when they think it might come available. We're talking several years down the road, maybe. So unfortunately, it's just not something we can do at this time. And I'd rather get this and get the revenue going and coming into the town, because obviously we can always use revenue in our town.
Okay.
And I think this is a good, clean, this shouldn't cause any real problems. I'm hoping, and I don't expect a lot of pushback from it, especially because of the location of it. It's the perfect, and it's the only thing we can do with this property. If this doesn't occur, it's going to sit there and it's going to be green instead of having the panels on top, and that's it. And then I'm more concerned at that point because of the risk of bikes, four-wheelers, all of that stuff getting into there with the top all covered in solar panels, so they can't get up there and start riding. That's been my concern on this whole thing. They start damaging that liner, and that thing is, we're gonna have to repair it all. One of the other things, as Russ has mentioned, the extended warranty. That we were looking at as part of the cost of the PRP group for the long-term O&M on this project. So that's obviously going to be provided as part of this agreement. That's going to save us some money on O&M as well. So even though it may be 90,000 or so coming in, there's actually some savings along out of the O&M cost from the PRP group. So I feel this is a win-win for all of us.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Marchand, do you have any comments about this project? Okay, all right. I believe you covered this slide, but you have one more slide in your packet. You might want to go on to it.
Yeah, I had a couple more slides, but I think
Yes.
we've covered it during Mr. Joyce's
We
presentation.
did some.
I would like to just back up into his presentation and clarify a couple of points that were made, just to add some color
Certainly.
to it. So one of your comments, Councilwoman, was about the 25-year period. So as we all know, solar and wind and other forms of renewable energy are expensive. And the way the industry works is the power from those projects are entered into for 25-year PPAs, power purchase agreements. That allows the project to recoup its money, that length of term. So the adjoining solar lease agreement has to also be 25 years to match up with it. So I'm going to enter into an agreement with hopefully the state of Rhode Island or some other virtual net metering off-taker in a 25-year PPA. So I can't break that lease within that 25 years. I hope that helps them make it make sense. But that's financially how solar projects recoup their cost, is that lengthy 25-year PPA agreement.
I understand what you're saying, but we had to do due diligence and ask that question.
Yeah.
Continue.
Okay. And then the 1% escalator. So the 1% escalator isn't tied to electricity prices. I'm going to enter into a contract for 25 years. That's going to be a set number with whoever's taking the offtake or the power. So my offtake isn't going to follow the price of electricity, is what I'm saying. So electricity might go up, but entering into that PPA agreement, you're probably going to be locked into a number.
I would understand, but you are going to be making money off of this as well. And I just, with a 25-year lock-in, we are essentially required to use you if we want to keep our warranty. I also want to make sure that the agreement is fair on our side as well.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. And we'll be as open as we possibly can on all the costs. And just to get back to the cost too, the interconnection right now is going down Arnold Road and then down New London toward West Warwick. You all know that area. There's telephone wires, electricity wires everywhere. All of those wires go back to the Hopkins Hill substation. The Hopkins Hill substation services you folks in West Greenwich and is absolutely jammed. It can't take any more renewable energy into that substation. We're fortunate at this project that a line comes up from Kent County substation from West Warwick up New London Ave. So right now, our power is going to go out to Arnold Road and then up Arnold Road and down to London a little bit to a telephone pole. That route, as you can probably understand, it's going to be pretty expensive work for National Grid. We are trying to find ways to reduce that cost. So these are some of the things that we have to work with as developers to try to make the whole financial package work.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from members of the council? I'd like to open that up to public comment and have you gentlemen available to answer any questions. Are there any members of the public who would like to ask questions about this project? Please raise your hand.
We have, Madam Chair, we have one, Mr. Greg Lucini. He is actually part of the company, so. Bring Greg.
Bring him in.
Mr. Lucini, can you hear us?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you very well. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Greg Lucini. I'm the CEO of Watershed Solar Development. I appreciate your taking the time tonight to hear about this great project. What I wanted to do is just take a moment to give you a little bit of the history. This is not something we just thought of as an afterthought. We've been working together with Watershed Geo to develop systems and technology which is unique to us and unique to our product to allow us to build solar on these closure turf caps. And I really welcome you to visit the Cranston site because you'll see one that's actually in operation. And you'll get a really good feel for exactly what this thing's going to look like because it's not like any other solar array that you've ever seen. So we will, whatever works for your team, we'd be glad to set it up and bring you out. But the point I really want to make is that this goes back years. And we actually were involved with the design and layout of the closure turf cap including the location of the vents for the gas and so forth, and the lines that connect them, to make sure that it was efficient for solar. So the day that this thing was installed or actually designed, we were already planning to put solar on it. And we were planning to use the proprietary installation techniques that we've been developing over the last several years to make sure that this is a successful project. So that's why when you hear, that we've been talking and working with Ed for over 2 years, that's absolutely the truth. It goes back to before this thing was even closed, that we were talking about how do we make this thing a success. Now we're to the point where the landfill's closed and we're ready to move it forward. And we really appreciate your time and look forward to working with you on this project.
Mr. Lucini, if there are members of the council who would like to tour the facility in Cranston on Pontiac Avenue, how would they make arrangements to do so?
I would suggest they coordinate it through Ed.
Okay.
And Ed can coordinate it with Russ Mayman, and we'll be able to arrange that really anytime at your convenience.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from members of the
Thanks, Greg.
public? I don't see any. Last questions from members of the council. Okay, gentlemen, thank you so much for making this presentation for us. We had many people on as attendees on our Zoom meeting, and these materials will be available on our website for those who want to do it. And then we'll follow Mr. LeBlanc's suggestion that we have some type of a public hearing or public meeting so that people who live in that area can become better acquainted with the project. So thank you. Okay, members of the council, may I have a motion to adjourn at 9:14?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Mr. LeBlanc,
I'll second
second.
the motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? Roll call vote, Madam Clerk?
Jamie LeBlanc,
Yes.
Kimberly Shockley,
Yes.
Jennifer Ludwig,
Yes.
Hillary Lima,
Yes.
Ann Dickson.
Yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. The meeting is adjourned at 9:14.